Hello everybody. You might have seen on my community tab that I've been online shopping again. You might also have seen, if you're a subscriber, that my Large Scots Pine didn't make it, and yeah, I think I killed it. I've been told now categorically by several people that Scots Pine can't be air layered or ground layered, and apparently that's true. It didn't like it, and it has keeled over and gone to the great bonsai show in the sky. Now, if we hadn't had two of the longest, hottest summers in a row, the last 2 years, might it have made it? Might have, but anyway, I've decided I want to replace it, so I bought myself a new Scots Pine, and as you can see from the drinks can, it's in a tiny little pot. I'm very tall and very lanky. For a bonsai, it's not in very good proportion. Let's show you. So yeah, I mean, if it stood up straight, it would be quite a tall tree in that very small pot, and that's not what I want. So the first thing I'm going to do, which might seem a bit drastic, but the first thing I'm going to do is chop out this centre here. Which brings the tree down in proportion a little. And that also leaves me with a conundrum in that we have 4 contenders, or 5 contenders for a leader. Let's have a quick look at the roots. I'm not going to do any root pruning or any real root work to this tree, but I do want to get it out of this little pot into something a little larger if I can. It's going to put up a bit of a struggle, but we got there. So I'll take off this layer of weeds, and that brings us down to a root layer. Nothing there to give any clues to a future front, and I don't want to disturb the roots any more than I just have. I'm going to reduce this to, I'm going to take out the tallest one. If in doubt, remove the tallest one. We are, after all, trying to create a bonsai, and just tidy that up a little bit. It still leaves me with 4. I'm going to remove that one, and hopefully that one will help with the healing process here. And I'm just going to take the growing tip out of this piece. Okay, so what next? I'm going to put it into this pot, which will give it quite a bit of growing room, and allow it to grow into a bonsai medium, and just leave it in that pot for probably a couple of years, and then maybe even move it into a bigger pot again to just try and fatten it up some. I could plant it in the ground, but I don't really have a lot of ground space, so yeah, let's do the putting it in the pot thing. An obvious problem with putting it in a pot like this is that well, the bonsai soil that I use just generally will just fall straight out of the bottom, and which isn't particularly helpful. Now, a trick I've used in the past is to get a piece of paper, and this was the instructions that came with the trees. You can then line the bottom of your pot with the paper, and if it makes it easier, you can just wet it slightly to make it sit down into all those nooks and crannies and hollows, and it will eventually drain through that paper. The paper will hold a surprising amount of water, and it takes quite a while for it to drain away. If you get yourself a small piece of wire, you can actually poke just a couple of little holes. That helps with the initial drainage of letting the water drain through, and then you can put your soil in the bottom of the pot, and it does not fall out. Now over time that paper will rot away. It will allow the tree to drain, but the paper will rot away, by which time hopefully the tree's on a bench somewhere, fairly static, so you're not washing the soil out until the roots have bound all the soil together into the pot. There we go, and then I'm just going to pop that, leaving the root ball completely undisturbed. It has had a good drink, and then I can just pot around it. For good measure, I nearly forgot, but I'm going to add some controlled release fertilizer. Just mix that in a little bit more. Get this tree growing away strongly. Hopefully it'll then be able to get its roots down and into all this good bonsai compost. Gradually the gacky stuff that it's in will dissipate. So hopefully by the time I get to repot this tree, probably in 2022, it will have filled this pot with roots and be ready to go into something even bigger to grow on. So this will be a start of a long-term playlist. Subscribe and follow along. Let's give it a good drink. Hopefully you can see how the water is pouring away from that quite nicely, nice and free drained, and yet the soil's not washing out of the pot. So I wanted to reduce this tree in height a little more, and I also wanted to put a bit of movement in it. I'd looked at it for a day or so after I'd filmed its arrival, and I just thought, it's too tall, too straight. So I've thrown a few pieces of wire on it and given it a little piece of movement. Hopefully that'll just enhance its future as we move along. So this is my second acquisition. This is a Bhutan Pine, which I purchased simply because I like the look of it. Now this came from the same company. It's in a different pot with different packaging, which is interesting. Similar type of soil mix. Almost looks like coffee grounds. It's definitely not peat. Now we just interrupt this video with another piece on this Royal Alder very quickly. Not enough work to be done to make it a video of its own, but I'll put a link to the playlist in the end screen and in the description. It's only a month since I last worked on my alder bonsai, and the regular alders, there's not a huge amount to say for them, but as you can see, this Royal Alder has absolutely exploded with growth. Just give it a quick trim just to pull it back in line, and so that we don't finish up this autumn with lots of long straight growths with no side branches. As I say, it was only May when I last looked at this one. I'm going to leave this piece and wire that up. Let's just trim off the rest first, and I'm just going to trim it to a vague triangle at this stage in its development. Trying to prune back to a leaf node where I can, just to bring it back into line. There's a piece coming right out of the front of the trunk here. We'll take that off. And then, as I say, I'm just shortening the rest. Not all the branches growing in the right direction, but we can worry about that later. Let's just trim that up relatively roughly. Another piece at the back there. And very loosely, because as you saw, it's growing very vigorously. Just going to put this piece of wire, try not to trap any leaves, but just to persuade this new growth that it's going to be the leader, and it's going to go skyward. Obviously that'll need keeping an eye on. Finally, before I return you back to the video you thought you were watching back in May, when I trimmed this up originally, I took a few cuttings. I just literally popped them in this jar of water. Some of them are, well, they're growing, but they haven't rooted yet. Others have now rooted quite strongly, so I should be potting those up into pots of their very own, and I might even put some of these pieces into the jar of water. Always worth a try with these things. Here's a quick 360 degrees, and yeah, these need to come down in size quite considerably, but we're beginning to get something at least reasonably tree shaped. So back to the video you thought you were watching. So this one has got a bit of potential. Does have some narrowing here quite substantially for some reason, but let's get it out of the pot, and I'm going to do exactly the same with this tree as with the other one. Just try and expose some of the top to look at the nabari a little. has an interesting kink at the bottom, which might be interesting in a future composition. So I don't want to disturb the roots too much at this time of the year. It's June. Okay, so I'm going to get this into a pot, and I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with the other one, but I'm just going to do it off camera so you don't have to watch it all again. So that's the Bhutan Pine, all potted up into its new home for the next few years. We have a lot of growth in one particular area here, which again is not ideal. You're going to get that awful bulge if you're not careful. I'm going to take out the central growing point to allow for a bit of taper, like so. That will make this the new leader. I'm going to remove some of these side pieces as well that are all emanating from the same spot on the trunk. That's just going to result in that unsightly bulge, as I say. I could keep that, but I'm going to remove this upper branch. Let me move you in. We have two branches, one directly above the other. I'm going to remove this one, like so. We have a third branch just here, which is fine. And we have another branch here, which I'm tempted to remove. In fact, I am going to remove, like so. That's took off quite a lot of top growth, but because I haven't really touched the roots at all, I don't think that's going to affect the tree from growing away strongly, which is what I want it to do. So that's all for this one. Let's move it back out. Even though it's not on the turntable, I can still give you a quick 360. I won't put it on the turntable because it's gonna just get the turntable all wet and soggy. But there we go, my Bhutan Pine. I bought on a whim, simply because I like the look of it, and it's going to have to be quite a big tree because of the length of these needles. I mean, they must be all of 3 inches long, I would think. If I put my long handled scissors next to them. Yeah, long needles. They may come down a little, but I think it makes sense to grow this on to be a large bonsai. So that's it, 2 new trees, 2 new playlists. Subscribe to follow them along through the years. Thank you all for watching in these troubled times. Please, please, please take care of yourselves. Stay safe.